This video is brought to you by Viture and their limited edition Cyberpunk 2077 Luma XR glasses, so look forward to hearing more about those during the video. Gamers, okay, plenty of bad news to get to this week, like, have you seen Ubisoft's stock price? Ish. So, let's do some good news first, shall we? And this good news comes from the most unlikely of places, Xbox. I don't know if you guys managed to tune in for it, but they held a developer direct yesterday where we knew we'd get our first proper look at Fable, Forza Horizon 6, and Game Freak's Beast of Reincarnation. It was also a tease of a secret fourth game, and I guess we'll talk about that one first. It's a multiplayer thing from Double Fine, makers of Psychonauts and the recent Keeper. The premise is that your character is a clay pot thing that you mold with your sort of bare gamer hands, and then you send this ceramic creation into the crucible of combat, brawling against other players in a variety of different ways. Not too many specifics here other than these gameplay clips and the knowledge that it's Double Fine, so it's going to be weird and playful and cool. But yeah, I don't know, man. I love me some Double Fine. I'm kind of ride or die with them at this point. This one doesn't jump out at me as one I'd be, logging in on day one. Similar to Remedy and their FBC Firebreak thing, I love weird studios who make weird single-player games, and I'm less interested when they try to make weird multiplayer games. But hey, I'm keeping an open mind, and I will definitely check it out at some point after it launches towards the middle of this year. No date yet. All right, let's get to the heavy hitters now. And for the past 6 years, Game Freak has been working on one game, Beast of Reincarnation. It's a far cry from their typical workflow where they put about 6 months of work into a new Pokemon game and then ship it. And you can tell that the team are very excited to be working on something new and ambitious, and that looks like it was released in the modern era rather than looking like a long-lost GameCube game suddenly exhumed in 2026. Beast of Reincarnation is wearing its inspirations proudly on its sleeve, I think. Imagine the protagonist of Stellar Blade meets the soundtrack and automatons of Nier, meets the nature and lupine companion of Princess Mononoke, meets the real-time ability-driven action combat of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yes, I know I just did that bit from the old Donkey video, but the truth is, it really does look like a remixing of a bunch of stuff, but its composition does look new and interesting and blurry for some reason. Hopefully they fix that up. But ultimately, this does look compelling. Like there's something here, even if it does look a little scrappy at this point. As a fan of everything this game seems to be riffing on, I am into this, and honestly, after talking so much shit about Pokemon for all these years, I'm just glad the developers at Game Freak are finally able to stretch their legs on a new project, so I wish them all the best, and I will definitely be reviewing this one when it drops sometime toward the middle of this year, no date yet. All right, next up, Forza Horizon 6. Holy shit, I really enjoyed Forza Horizon 5, and this one looks to be more of that in a cooler location with better visuals, more cars, and lots of nice little flourishes, like a new area that you can kind of build, like designing your own home-based compound thing in the middle of the Japanese countryside. The setting is obviously the star of the show here, and the choice to set it in Japan feels particularly inspired, given both the beauty of the landscapes and cityscapes, as well as the long-celebrated car culture. I mean, we all saw Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, right? Ah, man, that movie has aged so badly, terrible. Anyway, this looks absolutely S tier, a real crowd pleaser that I'm sure is going to be a highlight on Xbox's annual release list, and luckily, not too long to wait for it now, since it launches on May 19th. I'm legit thinking about buying a racing wheel and pedals to enjoy it properly, so if you have any suggestions for kit, then leave them in the comment section below because I'd love to hear them. Oh, and while you're down there, don't forget to like the video. Thanks. All right, time for the one we've all been waiting for now, our first proper look at Fable, the long awaited reboot of the classic fantasy RPG series. This one has been in development since Noah wore short pants, and Playground Games has released a bunch of trailers to this point, all of which kind of felt the same as each other. But this was a proper look at actual gameplay, including world design and characters and combat and chickens, and you know what? This looks fucking awesome. It really does feel like the love letter to the franchise that it claims to be, while also feeling totally fresh and modern with its cutting-edge presentation, open world, and its expanded systemic elements. Like, did you know that you could literally buy up an entire town's worth of real estate and then start evicting people just for fun? Did you know that you can birth an entire brood of children to various partners and then just totally ignore them? They're calling it Elon Musk mode. Anyway, jokes aside, this looks pretty damn incredible. I think we're all pretty skeptical of the Fable reboot, since reboots typically don't work out very well, like, I don't know, Saints Row or Mass Effect Andromeda or plenty of others. But look, this is looking pretty special indeed. And to think that Playground Games are putting out both this and Forza Horizon 6 in a single year, that is some straight up black magic right there, and I can think of precious few studios who have accomplished something similar. Fable is due out northern fall, and I'm gonna guess it's out before GTA 6 drops on November 19th, because no game dare release in 2026 after that. So Xbox had a rare good day while Ubisoft had a rare bad one. And I don't mean that Ubisoft's days are typically good, because Lord knows they're not. I just mean that this one was particularly bad. Just yesterday, Ubisoft announced the details behind a sweeping restructure of the business, something that was to be expected given that Ubisoft announced their intentions to restructure last year, and indeed began that work with the creation of Vantage Studios, a new subsidiary that would house their most valuable IP, propped up by a $1 billion investment from Tencent. This announcement sets the table for the rest of that restructure, and it seems to be even more profound and more disruptive than any of us could have predicted. At a high level, the business will soon be reshuffled into 5 separate creative houses, the first of which was that Vantage Studios I mentioned earlier. There's another house focused on competitive and co-op shooter experiences like The Division, Ghost Recon, and Splinter Cell. There's another one focused on live service experiences like The Crew, For Honor, Riders Republic, and Skull and Bones. The fourth house will focus on fantasy and narrative-driven games like Anno, Might and Magic, Prince of Persia, and Beyond Good and Evil. And the final house will focus on casual and family-friendly games like Just Dance, Hungry Shark, Uno, and more. So you'll notice that these houses are not really aligned to any specific genre or studio cluster. They're instead groupings based on commercials and business models and licenses. Like The Division, for example, is a live service game, and yet it doesn't sit in the live service house. While I'd argue that Splinter Cell is a narrative-driven stealth experience more than a competitive or co-op shooter. I get that these games all had to go somewhere, but this clustering does seem a little strange at first glance. Regardless, I do think this kind of defragmentation of Ubisoft is healthy. This is a publisher that had an extremely monolithic culture with a central editorial team that oversaw all projects and applied a very specific lens to game design. There is a reason that all Ubisoft games started to feel the same during the past decade. It's because Ubisoft's approach to progression, world design, and narrative were all handed down from on high. With these more autonomous creative units, hopefully these teams can find more innovative approaches to game making. Sadly though, this restructure does come with a cost, one measured in both job losses and cancelled projects. We already knew about some of the job cuts since a number of studios were recently shuttered by Ubisoft, including Halifax, Abu Dhabi, Red Links, as well as job cuts made at Massive Entertainment. The list of job losses is likely to increase though, with the news that Ubisoft has cancelled 6 games, including the long in development Prince of Persia remake. This one really stings because this remake has been in development for a long ass time, and it even switched developers at one point, with the project being completely rebooted. After all that time, money, and manpower invested, and with the enduring demand for new Prince of Persia experiences, or at least remade ones, we'll take what we can get. This is a real gut punch for both Ubisoft and Prince of Persia fans. The other 5 cancelled games are not known to us, but I'm sure word will leak out about them eventually. Ubisoft also announced that they're delaying 7 games, and while none of them are publicly announced yet, one of them is almost surely the Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake, which is basically the industry's worst kept secret at this point. The response to all of this news from the investor class was mixed. For example, investors holding long positions on Ubisoft were sad, while short sellers made hundreds of millions of dollars in a single afternoon when Ubisoft's share price dropped 30% in an instant. And by the way, that's after Ubisoft's share price already having lost nearly 95% of its value versus previous highs. Ubisoft now has the lowest share price, lowest market cap, and lowest price to sales of any of the major publishers. And that sort of pricing indicates that the market has absolutely no faith in Ubisoft's leadership to turn things around. Me personally, I don't know, man. I personally don't have much faith in Ubisoft's top brass, but there's no denying that Ubisoft is sitting on a mountain of valuable IP, and people still want AC games and Far Cry games and Splinter Cell games and Rayman games. There's demand there, and if Ubisoft can weather this storm and start getting games out, I think they'll be okay. But there's a lot of storm to come, what with more layoffs, delayed projects, and over $1 billion in debt, plus hostile short sellers still holding out for a bigger payday. A lot's riding on the next year as Ubisoft execute on this restructure plan and get those delayed projects back on track, so I'm sure we'll be talking about this company's fortunes plenty more throughout 2026. So stay tuned. One last little bit of Ubisoft news before we move on. You might recall last year we covered the departure of the now former Ubisoft VP and executive producer of the Assassin's Creed series, Marx Alexis Cote. It was a bit of a strange he said, she said situation. Ubisoft was in the midst of splitting their properties into these new creative houses, Vantage Studios being the first, and they said they offered Cote a new role there and then he turned it down, given the impression that he had left of his own accord. However, taking to LinkedIn, he made clear that this definitely wasn't the case, saying, quote, "A different position was mentioned, but it did not carry the same scope, mandate, or continuity with the work I'd been entrusted with in recent years. I also owe it to my teams, past and present, to say this plainly. I did not walk away. I stayed at my post until Ubisoft asked me to step aside, end quote. Anyway, the big update this week is that according to reporting from Radio Canada, Cott is now taking Ubisoft to court over the matter. He's suing Ubisoft for 1.3 million Canadian dollars, citing constructive dismissal, that is, a forced resignation due to a hostile work environment or employee conduct. The amount being claimed is accounting for 2 years of salary and moral damages, and he's also requesting the removal of his contractual non-compete obligations. According to the suit, Cott alleges that in the process of creating Vantage Studios, his role and influence were diminished. Ubisoft reportedly began a recruitment process for a head of franchise for Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six, a role that encompassed many of Cott's former responsibilities. Naturally, Cott applied for that position, but this application was allegedly rejected by Yves Guillemot on account of the position being based in France rather than in Canada. Instead, Cott was reportedly offered a lesser role at Vantage Studios as head of production, reporting to the head of franchise, before later being offered a role at an altogether separate creative house to oversee other Ubisoft properties. Understandably, Cott saw this as an unacceptable demotion. I mean, this guy was the head of the Assassin's Creed franchise for over 6 years, and in the many years prior to that, he was a senior producer, creative director, and game director on Assassin's Creed titles such as Odyssey, Syndicate, and Assassin's Creed 3. But it does get worse. Radio Canada's report suggests that after a 2-week period of considering his options, Cott had requested severance pay, but the suit alleges that Ubisoft wanted to draw things out, basically telling him to keep reflecting, that is until a Ubisoft spokesperson took to outlets like IGN to release a public statement on the matter, saying that Cott had, quote, chosen to pursue a new path elsewhere outside of Ubisoft, end quote, which the lawsuit claims was a strategy to both avoid paying him severance and maintain his non-compete obligations. Obviously, we don't know exactly what went down here, and the truth is likely somewhere in the middle. This guy has been pretty clear from the get-go that he did not leave voluntarily, so it's weird for Ubisoft to just announce that and expect it to fly. This matter will move through the courts over the coming months, so do expect an update on it in the future. Actually, there was one other Ubisoft story I wanted to cover. I promise this is actually the last one. Still on the topic of major franchise leads moving on, Julian Garrity, executive producer on The Division, is leaving Massive Entertainment to work at Battlefield Studios. Taking to Twitter, he says, quote, it's time for me to hang up my go bag, keeping the watch as I go on another grand adventure. The Division future burns bright and I can't wait for you to discover what the teams have been working on. Long live The Division and Godspeed, end quote. Ubisoft Massive also put out a statement sharing the news and thanking Garrity for his work, while assuring players that it wouldn't impact their many ongoing Division projects. Quote, our teams who built this world with Julian are still here, carrying it forward with an ambitious, unchanged commitment to the future of The Division 2, The Division 2 Survivors, The Division Resurgence, and The Division 3, end quote. Note that his departure comes after Ubisoft announced organizational changes at Massive Entertainment and Ubisoft Stockholm that will reportedly affect 55 roles at those studios. I suspect this might also have something to do with the tragic passing of Vince Zampella, who was previously leading the Battlefield franchise. While it's not clear what Garrity's new role will be, no doubt there's a ton of reshuffling going on at the studios involved with Battlefield right now, with gaps needing to be filled by experienced leaders, and Garrity fits neatly given his pedigree. It is a big genre jump for him though. The Division and Battlefield might both have guns, but that's about where the similarities end. Regardless, Garrity has proven himself a capable leader of studios and franchises, and with Battlefield 6 well and truly past its honeymoon phase, it'll be interesting to see what some new leadership will bring. Before we go on, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Viture. XR glasses is a product category I wasn't familiar with until last year when I tried out a pair, and I swear to God, that completely transformed the way I consume media on the go or even lying in bed. Like, why would I settle for a little 7-inch Steam Deck screen when I can be playing on a simulated 152-inch screen that allows me to see so much more detail and be so much more immersed? So I was extremely excited when this video's sponsor, Viture, sent me a set of these newly released, very limited edition Cyberpunk 2077 Luma XR glasses. This is a crossover collaboration they did where the physical design was done by actual CD Projekt Red artists, featuring Kiroshi-themed stylings and customizable RGB. The internals are what matter the most though, and this is where the Luma Cyber XR glasses really shine. Literally, since these things deliver up to 1500 nits of brightness, a first for this category since these glasses are using all new Sony-made panels. At 1200p resolution, the Luma Cyber XR glasses deliver unparalleled clarity and sharpness, and I can personally attest to that since I've used a few other XR glasses at this point, and these are definitely the clearest, sharpest, and brightest. They're also feature-packed for comfort with myopia adjustments, flexible arms, tiltable adjustments near the temples, changeable nose bridges, and 2 different size options for different IPDs. The sound is also excellent since they have inbuilt speakers from Harman. Best of all, they work with the Switch too. It does require the mobile dock, but that dock lets you connect 2 sets of glasses so you can play with someone else when you're sitting on a long plane ride, or just when someone else is hogging the TV at home. I've been using these for about a month now. I took them on an overseas holiday. I did a huge amount of my Silksong playthrough with these glasses, and it was an incredible viewing experience every time I put them on. If you're someone who commutes daily, who travels a lot, someone who watches TV in bed, or someone who wants a bigger screen to work on but doesn't have the desk space, I really recommend checking these out. Getting quick though, because the Luma Cyber XR glasses are a limited edition run with just 10,000 numbered units, so click the link or visit Viture to grab a pair now. Thanks Viture for sponsoring the video, and now let's get back to it. Turning to some non-Ubisoft news now, finally, and over the last week, Bungie have begun drumming up hype for the upcoming extraction shooter Marathon, with an in-depth video covering the game's runner shells, aka classes, followed by a pre-order trailer just the other day that came alongside a release date and pricing info. It's now locked in for a release date of March 5th, 2026, and will retail for $40 US, putting it at the same price point as Arc Raiders. They've also released the full voice cast for the game, and man, it is absolutely stacked. It's a long list that includes the likes of Samantha Bett and Neil Newbon from Baldur's Gate 3, Red Dead Redemption 2's Roger Clark, Elias Tufexis of Deus Ex fame, Aaron Yvette, who recently voiced Blonde Blazer in Dispatch. Did I mention they also got the Expedition 33 goats, Jennifer English and Ben Starr, and in fact, they're not the only Expedition 33 talent, since Rich Kibble, the voice of my boy Minoko, will also be making an appearance, hell yeah. No clue what Bungie needs this kind of voice talent for, given that Marathon is a multiplayer only game with no campaign, so it's probably just for audio logs and vendors and, you know, some of the class stuff, I don't know, but I'll take it as a response to Arc Raiders' absolutely garbage AI voice work. A voice cast like this is a very strong clapback, much respect to Bungie for doing that. Impressively, just hours after the game opened for pre-orders, it hit number 10 globally on the Steam bestsellers list, something I wouldn't have predicted a year ago given Marathon's poorly received reveal and plagiarism debacle, but now it's less surprising. It's been some real excitement for Marathon as of a month ago when Bungie put out a Vidoc that showcased improvements to audio and visual fidelity, storytelling and world building, and new feature additions in response to feedback such as proximity chat and solo queue, and the comment section for these recent trailers has been nearly universally positive. Bungie really has put in the work to flip the narrative here, and so far it's looking like it's paying off. I'm actually really keen to get my hands on this thing, and thankfully we won't have to wait too much longer, though I'll have to wait a little longer than most since the release is around the same time as I'm headed to San Francisco for GDC, my first time at that event actually, so I'm pretty pumped to check it out. Here's something that'll likely be a talking point at GDC this year. VR gaming is basically dead. Again, we weren't able to fit this story in last week, so I figured we'd cover it now. But yeah, Meta recently laid off over 1,000 workers from its VR department, Reality Labs, a loss of roughly 20 to 25% of its workforce, which several reports have indicated is part of a pivot towards the company's AI and wearable technology efforts. One Meta spokesperson said as much publicly, saying, quote, "We said last month we were shifting some of our investment from metaverse towards wearables. This is part of that effort, and we plan to reinvest the savings to support the growth of wearables this year," end quote. Meta had previously closed Ready at Dawn in August of 2024, the team responsible for the well-regarded Long Echo and Echo Arena titles. Now following them to the grave are three more of the company's internal game development studios as a result of these layoffs, those being Armature Studio, Twisted Pixel, and most notably Sanzara Games, the studio behind the absolutely excellent Asgard's Wrath. Another studio impacted by layoffs but not being shut down is Camouflage. They made that Iron Man VR game and later went on to release the excellent Batman Arkham Shadow under Oculus Studios in 2024, a game that was met with universally glowing reviews. One former employee told Aftermath that Camouflage has only retained, quote, a handful of employees, end quote, working on, quote, the new user experience for upcoming hardware, end quote. Man, that is bleak. The former employee also claimed that the studio heads were laid off, so presumably any in-development projects have been shut down, including that Batman Arkham Shadow sequel that was formerly in development at Sanzara Games. Absolutely blows that these studios will no longer be around, given they're responsible for many of the best VR games of the modern era. It's a massive loss to this segment of gaming that I'm sure will be keenly felt in the years ahead. But it's also, sadly, unsurprising. Meta's Reality Labs division has continued to lose billions in operating losses every single financial quarter for several years, with their recent earnings report posting a loss of $4.4 billion in just quarter 3. This led to economist Dean Baker putting out a newsletter earlier this year criticizing Meta, claiming that a total of $77 billion has been lost on VR, AR, and metaverse projects at Reality Labs. It's no secret that general interest in VR gaming has waned over the years, but to be honest, it never really took off in the first place. I mean, if a new Half-Life game wasn't enough to make the VR gaming scene pop off, then I'm not sure what else would. Even with the Quest 3 as affordable and comfortable as it is, the rate of VR adoption is slow and will surely slow down even more given that some of the platform's best studios are no longer creating games. I have absolutely zero kind words to offer to Meta boss Mark Zuckerberg, but I will say his retreat from VR isn't his typical sociopathic corporate malevolence. It is instead a pretty rational decision. This segment just isn't making money, despite Meta burning billions of dollars in cash to make it so. They put out a great piece of kit at a heavily subsidized price, and honest to God, the Quest 3 still feels like an absolute steal given its capabilities. They invested in studios and supported them to make fantastic games. Yeah, they did heaps of stupid shit too, like the whole Meta Horizon Second Life Ready Player One bullshit, which was never going to work, and the images from the trailer of that will forever live in infamy. But the actual VR hardware and the actual VR games were excellent, and it feels like that's all over now as we move into a new era focused on wearables and AI. stuff that's likely to be more commercially viable, but a lot less exciting for us as gamers. A quick lightning round to finish off. We spoke earlier about Marathon, and former art director of the game Joseph Cross spoke recently with Rita Gray about his departure from Bungie. It seems like one of the main reasons for his departure was that he wanted to make use of his talents across more projects, rather than pigeonhole himself into the decade-long commitments that Bungie games typically demand. Quote, "I'm not a founder at Bungie, it's not my company, and I'm conscious of the number of projects I get to work on in my life. I'm not getting any younger. I've spent what will ultimately be 15 years essentially on 2 projects for Bungie, Destiny and Marathon, with film work in between. And the natural cadence of that kind of work that happens post-launch in a live service game, I also understood what that was looking like," end quote. He also cites leadership responsibility as being a factor. Quote, "At the level of seniority that I had, there are challenges that don't necessarily exist as an artist, and getting to this phase of a project like this at this level had its own challenges that contributed also," end quote. Marathon's art direction was no doubt one of its most defining qualities when it was revealed, and Cross had this to say when speaking on why art had such a heightened role in the game's development. Quote, "At a certain point, I really did believe that art had potentially more of a responsibility for creating interest than it would have if we were working on a different kind of game. The game design, nobody's reinventing the wheel here. We're putting compelling spins on established mechanics. The narrative is also not reinventing the wheel. It's an abandoned space colony where something mysterious happened. We've seen this a lot. It's about how you spin it. And at some point, for better or worse, I told myself that this is an opportunity for art to sort of step up and provide a level of newness to this world," end quote. Most interesting though were his comments about the risks associated with Marathon and games like it, saying, quote, "Oftentimes we felt like we were sort of getting away with something. I think about that in the big picture, the idea of studios funding unproven, unknown projects for 6 or 8 years for hundreds of millions of dollars, sort of on spec. How much longer are things like that going to exist?" End quote. Good question, and I wish I was optimistic about his answer, but frankly, I think I'm picking up what Cross is putting down. Valve has changed their policy when it comes to disclosing the use of AI in games. One of our This Week in Video Games columnists, Simon Carlos, took to LinkedIn to highlight the changes, saying, quote, "Developers do not need to disclose if they used AI-powered tools like code helper software used for workflow purposes," end quote. Citing a line in Valve's new policy that reads, quote, "Efficiency gains through the use of AI-powered dev tools is not the focus of this section," end quote. Developers are, however, still required to list any use of, quote, "AI to generate content for the game and or AI content generated during gameplay," end quote. This obviously includes any AI generated content that makes it into the live game, but Valve also states this disclosure includes any of the game's associated materials like marketing assets or the store page itself. This change is likely in response to Epic boss Tim Sweeney highlighting the issue late last year, as well as the furor around games like Arc Raiders, Clear Obscure, and Divinity utilizing AI in their development processes in different ways and to different degrees, a conversation that is still very much ongoing and will likely be ongoing for some time yet. Activision have found themselves in hot water recently as they're currently under investigation by the Italian Competition Authority for, quote, "misleading and aggressive practices," end quote, in Diablo Immortal and COD Mobile. Their public press release says, quote, "Examples include repeated prompts both during and outside gameplay, urging users not to miss out on rewards, also through in-app messages and push notifications, as well as to purchase time-limited items before they become unavailable. These practices, together with strategies that make it difficult for users to understand the real value of virtual currency used in the game and the sale of in-game currency in bundles, may influence players as consumers, including minors, leading them to spend significant amounts, sometimes exceeding what is necessary to progress in the game without being fully aware of the expenditure involved," end quote. To all of this, I say, did the Italians just discover mobile gaming? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm 100% with them, and they're totally right to criticize all this bullshit. This has literally been mobile gaming's entire business model since the days of Candy Crush, so it's kind of strange for them to just start calling it out right now. Speaking of in-game spending, Fortnite recently introduced in-island transactions this month, where 100% of V-Bucks spent in player-created islands would go directly to the creators for the first year. Well, one popular island called Steal a Brain Rot decided to push their luck, immediately receiving attention for its egregiously priced bundles and, most critically, $1 spins of a roulette wheel for random effects. Obviously, people were like, that's just straight up gambling in a kid's game, and yeah, Epic took swift action. They now implemented a new rule that says, quote, "Do not offer any in-island transactions that directly or indirectly influence prize wheels in any way. For example, you must not offer as an in-island transaction a spin or increased luck for a prize wheel," end quote. Kind of crazy that the first moment something like this rolls out, it instantly defaults to exploitative gambling for children. Really makes you think, doesn't it? Prime Video is working on another Fallout series, only this one's going to be a reality TV show. It's tentatively titled Fallout Shelter, seemingly riffing on the Vault Management mobile game of the same name. A casting call on Twitter reads, quote, "Good morning, prospective Vault dwellers. In order to best serve you in what comes next, we need volunteers for a very real, very scientific opportunity to beta test a better society. Visit the website if you'd like to join Fallout Shelter, a new series full of escalating challenges, strategic dilemmas, and moral conundrums. Good luck," end quote. So yeah, it's obviously capitalizing on the popularity of shows like Squid Games and Beast Games. Let's just hope that Mr. Beast is not hosting or cameoing in this shit. This franchise has enough ghouls as it is. Award season continues as nominees have been announced for the GDC Awards, and you're never gonna guess who the Game of the Year contenders are. It's between Blueprints, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Ghosts of Yotei, Hollow Knight, Silksong, Split Fiction, and Say the Line, Bart, Claire Obscure, Expedition 33. Oh my god. Who would have guessed? Expedition 33 was represented in 8 categories all up, which is literally all of the categories except for social impact. Fair enough, I guess, though I would argue that it might qualify for that if the volume of fan art out there is anything to go by. A notable hire for the Riot MMO team, they recently picked up Raymond Bartos, formerly lead producer on World of Warcraft at Blizzard from 2022 to 2025. He now takes up the role of senior game producer at Riot Games, specifically on the MMO team, as stated in his announcement on LinkedIn. There's a lot riding on this one. This game was announced over half a decade ago, and we still haven't heard anything other than the team at one point completely restarting the project. So yeah, we'll probably be waiting like another, 15 years for this. Capping things off with some sales milestones now. Even though Nintendo Switch 2 sales were reportedly slowing down in the latter half of last year, it's continuing its reign as Japan's fastest selling console in the country's history, moving 3.78 million units in 2025. For comparison, in second place for 2025 is the PlayStation 5, which sold 879,000 units. So yeah, not even close. With so many Switch 2 owners, you can imagine a game like Mario Kart World sold like hotcakes, and indeed it did, selling 2.66 million physical copies, making it the best-selling physical game in 2025 in Japan. In other sales milestone news, Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown has sold 7 million copies in 7 years. Good stuff, absolutely love that one, and very much looking forward to the 8th installment. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot has sold 10 million copies in 5 years, and the underrated Elder Scrolls-like Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon has sold 1 million copies, an impressive result for an ambitious game made by a small team out of Poland. I've heard the latest expansion is actually pretty good too, so maybe consider checking that out. Okay, so what got announced or delayed last week? Look, I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. Not a whole lot aside from that marathon release date, which we talked about earlier. But one announcement we were kind of expecting this week on account of its existence leaking last week is Square Enix and Deck Nine's next entry in the cinematic narrative adventure Life is Strange. This one's called Life is Strange Reunion. If you couldn't already tell from the title, key art, or footage, this one again continues the first Life is Strange story, and in a bold move, it brings back the original protagonist, Chloe Price, who either did or did not die in the first game, depending on your choices. They have billed this one as the finale to the Max and Chloe narrative that has run for several games now, even though the series' original developers Dontnod thought this story arc was done long ago. And although we're writing this script a day ahead of the official reveal, we can already feel the strong opinions of the Life is Strange fandom reaching us through space and time. March 27 for this one for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. All right, moving on. What came out last week? Well, let's start with our radar pick from last week's show, the charming and creative 3D platformer Big Hops. This one fared pretty well with a strong OpenCritic rating of 78 and a very positive average on Steam with about 200 reviews counted. GameSpot gave this one an 8 out of 10 and had some nice things to say about it. Quote, "Big Hops is a testament to how much fun can be had with simple ideas done well. Hop has a modest suite of moves, finely tuned that string together in ways to make movement feel free-flowing and exuberant. On top of the strong foundation, it layers on flexibility, making the worlds you explore feel like playgrounds for your creative thinking and platforming finesse. Altogether, the result is a delightful platformer and the first great game of 2026, end quote. Not bad. Quarantine Zone, The Last Check, was the first one from Devolver Digital for the year, the post-apocalyptic zombie breakout checkpoint simulation. It's done well for itself, selling over 500,000 copies, but critically it's landed at a fair rating on OpenCritic with an average score of just 69. Nice. Mostly positive user ratings on Steam with over 5,000 reviews counted. PC Gamer had a great review that started, quote, "Don't try to hide a grenade in your butt." That may sound like advice so obvious that it never needs to be said, but in zombie outbreak management sim Quarantine Zone: The Last Check, people try to conceal live grenades in their asses so often, I'm starting to worry kids will think it's just something that gets done, end quote. Was there a point in their review though? Yes, there absolutely was. They concluded that while there were some great ideas here, more variety in the exams and patience would have gone a long way. They ended up giving it a 60 out of 100. Checking in quickly on Hytale's early access launch, not many reviews for this one just yet, and there's no Steam release to pull a user review aggregate from. But hey, it did get over 2.8 million players if one of the founders is to be believed, so it can't be all bad. IGN has an unscored underscored review in progress for this one. They noted that it's definitely very early access. Quote, even if it's just Minecraft again, it's an enjoyable rendition with some thoughtful tweaks and additions. It's almost like someone's wish listing of the things Mojang would never do or can't do with its legacy tech, end quote. Want to keep the anime and JRPG fans happy? The Legend of Heroes Trials Beyond the Horizon landed a very strong 82 on OpenCritic. But like we said last week, this is one you'll likely need to have prior investment in, as it's the third game in a multi-game narrative arc. And the specialists at RPG Site backed that up with their 8 out of 10 review. Quote, The Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon has still been the most fun I've had in Cavil yet. Beyond ends on one of the biggest cliffhangers this series has seen, which will make the wait feel even longer, but I'm so far deep down the rabbit hole at this point, the only way I'm escaping is getting through it, end quote. Taking a look at Mio Memories in Orbit now, the year's first notable Metroidvania, the sci-fi themed adventure has landed at a respectable 80 on OpenCritic. A Pals at Well Played gave this one of the highest scores, 9 out of 10, reasoning, quote, Mio wears its tough as nails Metroidvania influences proudly, but spends enough time contorting familiar ideas into punishing gauntlets and rewarding patience with dazzling artistic spectacle that it truly comes into its own, end quote. Austin's taking a look at this one for us, by the way, so do expect some thoughts from him on the channel very soon. All right, so what's coming out this week? A big week for indies quietly sneaking onto the scene before the big boys start rolling in the week after, and definitely some good ones to keep an eye out for as well. More than a few put this on your radar contenders right here. Let's start with Perfect Tide's Station to Station, which is just released on Steam by the time you're watching this. At first glance, it looks to be a by-the-books 2D point-and-click adventure game, but it's also one that got nominated for 2 awards at this year's Independent Game Festival, including Excellence in Narrative and the Grand Prize Game of the Year award, and that's before the game has even been released. Ed's been playing this one and he explains that its strength lies in its very honest and true-to-life story that revolves around a young college student in the early 2000s with an interesting mechanic that sees you trying to balance managing your limited time between socializing and gaining life experience while writing essays and attending other school and work commitments, with both of these things feeding into each other. Speaking of the early 2000s, remember Paper Mario? Well, Escape from Ever After is an RPG that is unapologetically riffing on Paper Mario's style with a cardboard cutout world and active turn-based battles, but it looks to be a very good rendition of it. The story deals with your protagonist starting work at a megacorp trying to take over fairy tale worlds, and it sees you set off to recruit storybook characters and fight back. This one will be out on Steam by the time you're seeing this, with a free demo still available. Speaking of storybooks, how about a much more messed up one? When Winnie the Pooh lapsed into the public domain, there were a bunch of folks who started using the character in interesting ways, and that includes the developers behind the roguelite card-based dungeon crawler Ring of Pain. Their new title is another roguelike dungeon crawler where you play a virus inside Winnie the Pooh, mutating him over time so he can fight enemies. It's called Winnie's Hole. And I am not making that shit up, because you can't make that shit up. Also, can you believe that this was partly funded by the Australian government? It releases into early access on Monday, January 26th. I will definitely be checking this one out. No way I'm missing this shit. Also coming out on the 26th, Highguard. Don't know what that one is? Well, I don't blame you. Highguard is the medieval-inspired PvP shooter from former Respawn Entertainment developers, which famously featured as the One Last Thing reveal at the Game Awards, causing a lot of confusion, to say the least. There's been a bit of chatter about how they reportedly didn't pay big bucks for that last slot, and Jeff just kind of gifted it to them in a way that kind of ended up backfiring. But regardless, they've been strangely quiet since. Even at the time of writing, they haven't followed up on the reveal with anything substantial, which feels a little odd for a game releasing in just a few days. Still, it won't be long until we can see it for ourselves and make some more informed judgments. It will be free to play on Steam, with console release supposedly planned for the future. On the 27th, we've got another point-and-click adventure game. This one's a comedy game called Earth Must Die. It comes from longtime developer Size 5, known for games like Lair of the Clockwork God, and features a seriously all-star cast of British comedians as its voice cast, including the creator and co-host of the excellent Taskmaster series, Alex Horn. PC only for this one. I was speaking to a friend who has played through this. He says it's absolutely fantastic, so definitely keep an eye out for it. Something completely different launching on the same day in early access is Echoes of Elysium, a 6-player co-op survival RPG that basically looks to be Sea of Thieves, but with airships. This one comes from Loric Games, a new outfit funded by many of the people formerly of MMO developer Mythic Entertainment, best known for Dark Age of Camelot, and who eventually became BioWare Mythic before being shut down by EA. It will be very interesting to see how this one fares. Moving on to Thursday, January 29th, this is the day that freeform mountain and rock climbing game Can finally releases after an initial delay. Maddie played this one back at Gamescom and came away really impressed. I played it at the Gamescom before that and really loved it. It's supposedly quite brutal, but also nicely atmospheric with a strong narrative hook to it too. If you like Don't Nod's Jusant, then this seems to be a good one to keep your eye on, but do be aware that it's going to be a lot more challenging. This one also just won 2 awards at the Indiecades, the Systemic Design Award and the Grand Jury Award. Again, game's not even out yet, already winning awards, not bad. Rounding off our stacked week of indies is one from Australia we've had our eye on for a while now, an unashamedly girly Y2K inspired boomer shooter called Don't Stop Girly Pop. The shtick here, beyond the very striking art direction, is the emphasis on fast-paced FPS movement and the fact that the faster you go, the more damage you do. We've played this one briefly at a few events and it seems to be very cool, so do keep an eye on it as well. Steam only for this one. And finally, what is arguably the biggest release for our specific guidelines when a week starts and ends is Code Vein 2, the sequel to Bandai Namco's very anime, Souls-like action RPG series. Austin actually played a preview of this one last year and he says that there's a bit of a time travel twist to the narrative, there's a lot of flashy abilities for each weapon type. The key shtick are the companions, who each have their own unique movesets and you can fight alongside them, or you can merge with them for a stat boost. Sadly though, there's no co-op this time around, which is one of the best features from the last game, so a bit weird that they removed that one. Anyway, this one's hitting PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. As the Japanese say, please look forward to it. One thing we're noticing is that narrative deduction games are definitely becoming more prevalent lately, with games like Blueprints and Seance Manor frequently coming up in conversation. This time last year, we kicked off 2025 with a very good one called The Root Trees Are Dead, and now this year, there's something else to scratch that brain itch, so put this on your radar.
Tell me what you can see.
There's a dial and it makes the code on the front change.
Oh, that's right. There are codes for everything. There must be a code to wake it up.
This game is called TR49, and it's a new one from the interactive narrative-focused studio Inkle. The premise is that you wake up in a dark basement in front of an archaic World War II era computer of sorts, and there's this voice telling you that the fate of the world rests on you finding the record of a particular book and deleting it, but you have no idea where it is or where to start. You then have to use this clunky and tactile archival system to explore and catalog books and journals and notes, learn more about the people that built and used this machine, and unravel the wild series of events that led you to where you are now. Ed's played right the way through this one actually, and he definitely recommends it, but that's all he can say about it without ruining the experience. It's that kind of game. TR49 is out now on Steam, PC, Mac, and iOS. If you like the look of it, we've actually left a link to it over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. That was a long show, so we'll do a very quick feel-good story for the week. This one comes courtesy of PC Gamer. As we discussed earlier in the show, Bungie revealed a release date for Marathon recently, while also opening up pre-orders on Steam. Nothing remarkable about that. Only problem was, there was some sort of Steam bug at work that produced some very unwanted results, depending on your relationship to other Bungie products. Turns out that when you pre-ordered Marathon on Steam, Destiny 2 would immediately begin installing on your PC. Like, just completely out of nowhere, boom, Destiny 2 begins downloading. Bungie did correct the bug, issuing a patch note that read, quote, "We've resolved an issue where Destiny 2 would begin installing after pre-ordering Marathon on Steam," end quote, but not before Twitter user Chris Arcade put out this absolute banger, quote, "If you pre-order Marathon, it installs a virus on your computer named Destiny 2, end quote. Oh, it's so true, unfortunately. All right, we're done, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for sticking right through to the end. We always love it when you do that, just like we love it when you drop the video a like or subscribe or ding that notification bell or all of the above. All that good stuff that helps keep the lights on over here, since the algorithm gods always demand their pound of flesh. If you want to support us even more, the single best thing you can do is sign up either for free or as a paid supporter over at our website, thisweekinvideogames.com. There you'll find tons more news coverage, reviews, features, op-eds, and more. All of it 100% ad-free, because we also don't like visiting most modern day websites where you can barely see the content. So we thought we would just try something different. Be on the lookout for Austin's Ashes of Creation impressions video that goes up tomorrow night, while I'm in the process of reviewing the delightful Can. Really excited to talk about that one, so stay tuned. For now, thanks again for watching, take good care of yourself, and we'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.